Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 21st class in this series. Today, for our workout, we're going to do a bunch of stuff with Zhang Shuiyan's fundamental movements, his line drills we do every day in Tiantan and Beijing. We're also going to touch on some of those Capoeira Basics that we did yesterday. I hope you're all doing well. Please be sure to like, subscribe, again, give me comments, feedback, and all that good stuff, and I will keep on posting until there's a real class to teach again.
Why it made sense for General Cheng to have asked to have this man, who was once a soldier, under his command.
Hip circles.
Who appeared so vulgar and careless, had eyes as sharp as knives. Maybe he wasn't a good cop, but he was certainly a fearsome one. A year earlier, Wang Miao had been in charge of the nanoscale components for the Sinotron 2 high-energy particle accelerator project. One afternoon, during a brief break at the Liang construction site, Wang was struck by the scene before him. As a landscape photography enthusiast, Wang often saw the sights around him as artistic compositions. The main component of the composition was the solenoid of the superconducting magnet they were still installing. About 3 stories high and only half completed, the magnet loomed like a monster made of giant blocks of metal and a confusing mess of cryogenic coolant pipes. Like a junk heap from the Industrial Revolution, the structure exuded inhuman technological grimness and steel-bound barbarity. In front of this metal monster stood the slim figure of a young woman. The composition's lighting was fantastic as well. The metal monster was buried in the shadow of a temporary construction shelter, further emphasizing its stern, rough quality. But a single ray of light from the westering sun, coming through the central hole in the shelter, fell right on the woman. The soft glow lit up her supple hair and highlighted her white neck above the collar of her overalls, as though a single flower was blooming in a metal ruin after a violent thunderstorm. "What are you looking at? Get back to work." Wang was shocked out of his reverie, and then realized that the director of the Nanotechnology Research Center wasn't talking to him, but to a young engineer who had also been staring at the woman. Having returned from art to reality, Wang saw that the young woman wasn't an ordinary worker. The chief engineer stood next to her, explaining something respectfully. "Who is she?" Wang asked the director. "You should know her," the director said, waving his hand around in a large circle. "The first experiment on this 20 billion yuan accelerator will probably be to test her superstring model. Now, seniority matters in theoretical physics, and normally she wouldn't have been senior enough to get the first shot, but those older academics didn't dare to show up first, afraid that they might fail and lose face. So that's why she got the chance." "What? Young Dong is a woman?" "Indeed," the director said. "We only found out when we finally met her 2 days ago." The young engineer asked, "Does she have some psychological issue? Why else wouldn't she agree to be interviewed by the media? Maybe she's like Qian Zhongshu, who died without ever appearing on TV. But at least we knew Qian's gender. I bet Yang had some unusual experiences as a child. Maybe it made her somewhat autistic." Wang's words were tinged with a hint of self-mockery. He wasn't even famous enough for the media to be interested in him, let alone to turn down interview requests. Yang walked over with the chief engineer. As they passed, she smiled at Wang and the others, nodding lightly without saying anything. Wang remembered her limpid eyes. That night, Wang sat in his study and admired the few landscape photographs, his works he was the most proud of, hanging on the wall. His eyes fell on a frontier scene, a desolate valley terminating in a snow-capped mountain. On the near end of the valley, half of a dead tree, eroded by the vicissitudes of many years, took up 1/3 of the picture. In his imagination, Wang placed the figure that lingered in his mind at the far end of the valley. Surprisingly, it made the entire scene come alive, as though the world in the photograph recognized that tiny figure and responded to it, as though the whole scene existed for her. He then imagined her figure in each of his other photographs, sometimes pasting her two eyes into the empty sky over the landscapes. Those images also came alive, achieving a beauty that Wang had never imagined. Wang had always thought that his photographs lacked some kind of soul. Now he understood that they were missing her. All the physicists on this list have committed suicide in the last 2 months, General Chung said. Wang was thunderstruck. Gradually, his black and white landscapes faded into blankness in his mind. The photographs no longer had her figure in the foreground.
Okay, right
her
leg,
eyes were white
figure
from
eight.
the skies. Those worlds were all dead. When did this happen? Wang asked mechanically. The last 2 months, Chung repeated. You mean the last name, don't you? Shu responded with satisfaction. She was the last to commit suicide. 2 nights ago, overdosed on sleeping pills. She died very peacefully, no pain. For a moment, Wang was grateful to Shu. Why? Wang asked. The dead scenes in those landscape photographs continued to flicker through his mind. General Chung replied,
Left leg.
The only thing we can be sure of is this. The same reason drove all of them to suicide, but it's hard to articulate. Maybe it's impossible for us non-specialists to even understand the reason. The document contains excerpts from their suicide notes. Everyone can examine them after the meeting. Wang flipped through the notes. All of them seemed to be long essays. Dr. Ding, would you please show Yang Dong's note to Professor Wang? Hers is the shortest and possibly the most representative. The man in question, Ding Yi, had been silent until now. After another pause, he finally took out a white envelope and handed it across the table to Wang. Shu whispered, He was Yang's boyfriend. Wang recalled that he had seen Ding at the particle accelerator construction site in Liang.
Figure eights.
He was a theoretician who had become famous for his discovery of the macroatom while studying ball lightning. Wang took from the envelope a thin, irregularly shaped sheet exuding a faint fragrance. Not paper, but birch bark. A single line of graceful characters was written on it. All the evidence points to a single conclusion. Physics has never existed and will never exist. I know what I'm doing is irresponsible, but I have no choice. There wasn't even a signature. She was gone. Physics does not exist. Wang had no idea what to think. General Chung closed the folder. The file also contains some specific information related to the experimental results obtained after the completion of the world's 3 newest particle accelerators. It's very technical and we won't be discussing it here. The first focus of our investigation is
Right
the
leg,
frontiers of
internal
science.
rotation.
UNESCO designated 2005 the World Year of Physics, and that organization gradually developed out of the numerous academic conferences and exchanges that occurred among world physicists that year. Dr. Ding, since you're a theoretical physicist, can you give us more background on it? Ding nodded. I have no direct connection with the frontiers of science, but it is famous in academia. Its core goal is a response to the following. Since the second half of the 20th century, physics has gradually lost the concision and simplicity of its classical theories. Modern theoretical models have become more and more complex, vague, and uncertain. Experimental verification has become more difficult as well. This is a sign that the forefront of physics research seems to be hitting a wall. Members of the frontiers of science want to attempt a new way of thinking. To put it simply, they want to use the methods of science to discover the limits of science, to try to find out if there is a limit to how deeply and precisely science can know nature, a boundary beyond which science cannot go. The development of modern physics seems to suggest that such a line has been touched. Very good. General Chung said. According to our investigation, most of the scholars who committed suicide had some connection with the frontiers of science, and some were even members. But we found no evidence of the use of illegal psychotropic drugs or techniques akin to the psychological manipulation of religious cults. In other words, even if the frontiers of science influenced them, it was only through legal academic exchanges. Professor Wang, since they recently contacted you, we'd like to ask you for some information.
Figure eights.
Sure, added gruffly. Including the names of your contacts, the times and locations of meetings, the content of your conversations, and if you exchanged letters or emails, shut up, Dasha, General Chung said. Another police officer leaned over and whispered to Shu. Do you think we'll forget you have a mouth if you don't use it all the time? Shu picked up his teacup, saw the drowned cigarette butt inside, and put it back down. Shu's questions irritated Wang again, not unlike the feeling a man has upon finding out that he has swallowed a fly with his meal. The gratitude he had felt earlier was gone without a trace, but he restrained himself and answered. My contact with the frontiers of science began with Shen Yufei. She's a Japanese physicist of Chinese descent who currently works for a Japanese company here in Beijing. She once worked at a Mitsubishi lab, researching nanotech. We met at a technical conference at the beginning of this year. Through her, I met a few other physicist friends, all members of the frontiers of science. Some Chinese,
external hip
some
rotation?
foreign. When I talked with them, all the topics were, how do I put this, very radical. They all involved the question that Dr. Ding just described. What is the limit of science? Initially, I didn't have much interest in these topics. I thought of them as only an idle pastime. My work is in applied research, and I don't know much about these theoretical matters. Mainly, I was interested in listening to their discussions and arguments. All of them were deep thinkers with novel points of view. I felt that I was opening my mind through the exchanges. Gradually, I grew more interested. But all our talk was limited to pure theory and nothing else. They once invited me to join the frontiers of science, but if I had done so, attending the discussions would have turned into a duty. Since my time and energy were limited, I declined. Professor Wang, General Chung said, we'd like you to accept the invitation and join the frontiers of science. This is the main reason we asked you here today. Through you, we'd like to learn more about the internal workings of the organization. You want me to be a mole? Wang was uneasy. A mole? Shu laughed. Chung gave Shu a reprimanding look. He turned back to Wang. We just want you to give us some information. We have no other way in. Wang shook his head. I'm sorry, General. I cannot do this.
Shoulder drop.
Professor Wang, the frontiers of science is made up of elite international scholars. Investigating it is an extremely complex and sensitive matter. For us, it's like walking across thin ice. Without someone from academia helping us, we cannot make any progress. This is why we are making this request. But we'll respect your wishes. If you won't agree, we understand. I am very busy at work. I just don't have the time. General Chung nodded. All right, Professor Wang. We won't waste any more of your time. Thank you for coming to this meeting. Wang waited a few more seconds before realizing that he had been dismissed. General Chung politely accompanied Wang to the door. They could hear Shu's loud voice behind them. It's better this way. I disagree with the plan anyway. So many bookworms have already killed themselves. If we send him, he'd be a meat dumpling thrown to the dogs. Wang turned around and walked back back to Shu. Forcing his anger down, Wong said,
"The way you speak is not appropriate for a good police officer."
"Who said I'm a good cop?"
"We don't know why these researchers killed themselves, but you shouldn't speak of them so contemptuously. Their minds have made irreplaceable contributions to humanity."
"You're saying they're better than me?" Still seated, Shu lifted his eyes to meet Wong's. "At least I wouldn't kill myself just because someone told me some bullshit."
"You think I would?"
"I have to be concerned about your safety." That trademark smirk again.
"I think I would be much safer than you in such situations. You must know that a person's ability to discern the truth is directly proportional to his knowledge."
"I'm not sure about that. Take someone like you."
"Be quiet, Dasha,"
General Chung said.
"One more sentence and you're out of here." "It's okay,"
Wong said.
"Let him speak."
He turned to General Chung.
"I've changed my mind. I will join the frontiers of science as you wish."
"Good." Shu nodded vigorously. "Stay alert after you join. Gather intelligence whenever it's convenient. For example, glance at their computer screens. Memorize email or web addresses."
"That's enough. You misunderstand me. I don't want to be a spy. I just want to prove you're an idiot."
"If you remain alive after you join them for a while, that would be the best proof. But I'm afraid for you." Shu lifted his face, and the smirk turned into a wolfish grin.
"Of course I'll stay alive, but I never want to see you again."
They kept Wong out of the way while the others left, so he wouldn't have to deal with ShuiJiao again. Then General Chung walked Wong all the way down the stairs and called for a car to take him back. He said to Wong,
"Don't worry about ShuiJiao. That's just his personality. He's actually a very experienced beat officer and anti-terrorism expert. 20 years ago, he was a soldier in my company."
As they approached the car, Chung added,
"Professor Wong, you must have many questions." "What did everything you talked about in there have to do with the military?" "War has everything to do with the army."
Wong looked around in the spring sun, baffled.
"But where is this war? This is probably the most peaceful period in history."
Chung gave him an inscrutable smile.
"You will know more soon. Everyone will know. Professor Wong, have you ever had anything happen to you that changed your life completely? Some event where afterward the world became a totally different place for you?" "No." "Then your life has been fortunate. The world is full of unpredictable factors, yet you have never faced a crisis."
Wong turned over the words in his mind, still not understanding.
"I think that's true of most lives." "Then most people have lived fortunately. But many generations have lived in this plain manner. All fortunate."
Wong laughed, shaking his head.
"I have to confess that I'm not feeling very sharp today. Are you suggesting that, yes, the entire history of humankind has been fortunate? From the Stone Age till now, no real crisis has occurred. We've been very lucky. But if it's all luck, then it has to end one day. Let me tell you, it's ended. Prepare for the worst."
Wong wanted to ask more, but Chung shook his head and said goodbye, preventing any more questions. After Wong got into the car, the driver asked for his address. Wong gave it and asked,
"Oh, were you took me here. I thought it was the same type of car.
No, it wasn't me. I took Dr. Ding here. Wong had a new idea. He asked the driver to take him to Ding's address instead. 5. A game of pool. As soon as he opened the door to Ding Yi's brand new 3-bedroom apartment, Wong smelled alcohol. Ding was lying on the sofa with the TV on, staring at the ceiling. The apartment was unfinished, with only a few pieces of furniture and little decoration, and the huge living room seemed very empty. The most eye-catching object was the pool table in the corner. Ding didn't seem annoyed by Wong's unannounced visit. He was clearly in the mood to talk to someone.
I bought the apartment about 3 months ago.
Ding said.
Why did I buy it? Did I really think she was gonna become interested in starting a family?
His laugh sounded drunk.
You two...
Wong wanted to know the details of Yang Dong's life, but didn't know how to ask the questions.
She was like a star. Always so distant. Even the light she shone on me was always cold.
Ding walked to one of the windows and looked up at the night sky. Wong said nothing. All he wanted now was to hear her voice. But a year ago, as the sun sank in the west, when she and he had locked eyes for a moment, they had not spoken to each other. He had never heard her voice. Ding waved his hand as though trying to flick something away.
Professor Wong, you were right. Don't get involved with the police or the military. They're all idiots. The deaths of those physicists had nothing to do with the frontiers of science. I've explained it to them many times, but I can't get them to understand. They seem to have conducted some independent investigation. Yes, and the investigation's scope was global. They should already know that 2 of the dead never had any contact with the frontiers of science, including Yang Dong.
Ding seemed to have trouble saying her name.
Dingy, you know that I'm already involved. So, as far as why Yang made the choice that she did, I'd like to know. I think you must know some of it.
Wong thought he must sound very foolish as he tried hard to disguise his real intent.
If you know more, you'll only get pulled in deeper. Right now, you're just superficially involved, but with more knowledge, your spirit will be drawn in as well. And then, it'll mean real trouble. I work in applied research. I'm not as sensitive as you theoreticians. All right, then. Do you play pool?
Ding walked to the pool table.
I used to play a little in college. She and I loved to play. It reminded us of particles colliding in the accelerator.
Ding picked up 2 balls, one black and one white. He set the black ball next to one of the pockets and placed the white ball about 10 centimeters from the black ball.
Can you pocket the black ball? This close? Anyone can do it.
Try. Wong picked up the cue, struck the white ball lightly, and drove the black ball into the pocket.
Good. Come, now let's move the table to a different location.
Ding directed the confused Wong to pick up the heavy table. Together they moved it to another corner of the living room, next to a window. Then Ding scooped out the black ball, set it next to the pocket, and again picked up the white ball and set it down about 10 centimeters away.
Think you can do it again? Of course.
Go for it. Again, Wong easily made the shot. Ding waved his hands.
Let's move it again.
They lifted the table and set it down in a third corner of the living room. Ding set up the 2 balls as before.
Go. Listen, we go.
Wong shrugged helplessly. He managed to pocket the black ball a third time. They moved the table 2 more times, once next to the door of the living room, and finally back to the original location. Ding set up the 2 balls twice more, and Wong twice more made his shot. By now, both were
were slightly winded.
Ginga.
Good. That's the conclusion of the experiment. Let's analyze the results. Ding lit a cigarette before continuing. We ran the same experiment 5 times. 4 of the experiments differed in both location and time. 2 of the experiments were at the same location, but different times. Aren't you shocked by the results? He opened his arms exaggeratedly. 5 times! Every colliding experiment yielded the exact same result.
Well, what are you trying to say?
Wang asked, gasping. Can you explain this incredible result? Please, use the language of physics.
All right. During these 5 experiments, the mass of the 2 balls never changed. In terms of their locations, as long as we're using the frame of reference of the tabletop, there was also no change. The velocity of the white ball striking the black ball also remained basically the same throughout. Thus, the transfer of momentum between the 2 balls didn't change. Therefore, in all 5 experiments, the result was the black ball being driven into the pocket.
Ding picked up a bottle of brandy and 2 dirty glasses from the floor. He filled both and handed one to Wang. Wang declined. Come on, let's celebrate. We've discovered a great principle of nature. The laws of physics are invariant across space and time. All the physical laws of human history, from Archimedes' principle to string theory, and all the scientific discoveries and intellectual fruits of our species are the byproducts of this great law. Compared to us 2 theoreticians, Einstein and Hawking are mere applied engineers.
I still don't understand what you're getting at.
Imagine another set of results. The first time the white ball drove the black ball into the pocket. The second time the black ball bounced away. The third time the black ball flew onto the ceiling. The 4th time the black ball shot around the room like a frightened sparrow, finally taking refuge in your jacket pocket. The 5th time the black ball flew away at nearly the speed of light, breaking the edge of the pool table, shooting through the wall, and leaving the Earth and the solar system, just like Asimov once described. What would you think then? Ding watched Wang. After a long silence, Wang finally said,
This actually happened. Am I right?
Ding drained both glasses in his hands. He stared at the pool table as though looking at a demon. Yes, it happened. In the last few years, we finally obtained the necessary equipment for experimentally testing fundamental theories. 3 expensive pool tables have been constructed. One in North America, another in Europe, and the third you're familiar with in Liang. Your nanotechnology research center earned a lot of money from it. These high-energy particle accelerators raised the amount of energy available for colliding particles by an order of magnitude to a level never before achieved by the human race. Yet, with the new equipment, the same particles, the same energy levels, and the same experimental parameters would yield different results. Not only would the results vary if different accelerators were used, but even with the same accelerator, experiments performed at different times would give different results. Physicists panicked. They repeated the ultra-high energy collision experiments again and again, using the same conditions, but every time the result was different, and there seemed to be no pattern.
What does this mean?
Wang asked. When he saw Ding staring at him without speaking, he added,
Oh, I'm in nanotech, and I also work with microscale structures. But that's orders of magnitude larger than the scale at which you do your work. Please, educate me.
It means that the laws of physics are not invariant across time and space.
What does that mean?
I think you can deduce the rest. Even General Chung figured it out. He's really a smart man. Wang looked outside the window thoughtfully. The lights of the city were so bright that the stars of the night sky were drowned out.
It means that laws of physics that could be applied anywhere in the universe do not exist. Which means that physics, also does not exist.
Wong turned back from the window. I know what I'm doing is irresponsible, but I have no choice, Liang said. That was the second half of her note. You just stumbled on the first half. Now, can you understand her?
At least a little?
Wong picked up the white ball. He caressed it for a bit and put it back down.
For someone exploring the forefront of theory, that would indeed be a catastrophe.
To accomplish something in theoretical physics requires one to have almost religious faith. It's easy to be led to the abyss. As they said their farewells, Ding gave Wong an address. If you have the time, please visit Yongdong's mother. She and her mother always lived together, and she was the entirety of her mother's life. Now the old woman is all alone.
Ding, you clearly know a lot more than I do. Can you tell me more? You really believe that the laws of physics are not invariant across time and space?
I don't know anything. Ding stared into Wong's eyes for a long time. Finally, he said, "But that is the question." Wong knew that he was only finishing what the British colonel had begun to say. To be or not to be? That is the question. 6. The shooter and the farmer. The next day was the start of the weekend. Wong got up early and left on his bicycle. As a hobby photographer, his favorite subjects were wildernesses free of human presence.
And Walset.
But now that he was middle-aged, he no longer had the energy to engage in such indulgent travel and only shot city scenes. Consciously or subconsciously, he usually chose corners of the city that held some aspect of the wild. A dried lake bed in a park, the freshly turned soil of a construction site, a weed struggling out of cracks in cement. In order to eliminate the busy colors of the city in the background, he only used black and white film. Unexpectedly, he had developed his own style, and it gained some notice. His works had been selected for 2 exhibitions, and he was a member of the Photographers Association. Every time he went out to take pictures, he would ride his bike and wander around the city in search of inspiration and compositions that caught his fancy. Often, he would be out all day. Today, Wong felt strange. His photography style tended toward the classical, calm and dignified. But today, he could not seem to get in the mood necessary for such compositions. In his mind, the city, as it awoke from its slumber, seemed to be built on quicksand. The stability was illusory. All night long, he had dreamt of those 2 billiard balls. They flew around a dark space without any pattern, the black one disappearing against the black background and only revealing its existence occasionally when it obscured the white ball.
Can the fundamental nature of matter really be lawlessness? Can the stability and order of the world be but a temporary dynamic equilibrium achieved in a corner of the universe? A short-lived eddy in a chaotic current?
Without realizing it, he found himself at the foot of the newly completed China Central Television Building. He stopped at the side of the road and lifted his head to gaze up at this gigantic A-shaped tower, trying to recapture the feeling of stability. His gaze followed the sharp tip of the building, gleaming in the morning sunlight, pointing toward the blue, bottomless depths of the sky. 2 words suddenly floated into his consciousness: shooter and farmer. When the members of the frontiers of science discussed physics, they often used the abbreviation SF. They didn't mean science fiction, but the 2 words shooter and farmer. This was a reference to 2 hypotheses, both involving the fundamental nature of the laws of the universe.
Okay, that's the time we have for today. Thank you so much for watching, and again, if you have any requests, please let me know. Stay safe, everyone.